Live streaming is on.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining us for the second day of Kamailio conference online event, the celebration edition of 19 years of Kamailio project development. We are now ready to start with our second day of sessions. We'll have a few presentation, live demo, and we end up with the celebration party, free discussion, sharing funny or not funny stories about using Kamailio or working in the VoIP space in the last 2 decades practically. The streaming it's live on YouTube, and it's recommended to watch their Ask Question on Matrix channel or YouTube comments, and keep the video conferencing room with a lower number of participants. Only if you want to actively participate and ask questions, you are welcome to join the video conferencing room. In case of quality going down, we may have to ask some of the participants to go and watch on YouTube and leave the room. That would be from my side. So be ready for 19 years celebration party in a few hours. Bring your drink, cookie, and till then, let's look at some interesting knowledge sharing from our developers. It's now time for Henning to start with what I noticed to be a very interesting topic on our mailing list, respectively integration with Microsoft Teams. Everyone knows Henning. It's one of the developers that it's been a project for many years, more than 1 decade, doing a lot of contribution to the core, being involved in management. So it's hard not to notice what Henning did for the project so far. Henning, thank you for helping the project along these years and coming to this event and sharing your experiences of integration of Kamailio with Microsoft Teams. Your turn now.
Okay, thank you, Daniel. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. Yeah, thank you for having me. Thank you also for the good work you have done in organizing the event. Great that we can have it at least in this form. Perfect. So yeah, as you mentioned, Microsoft Teams has been kind of a hot topic in the last half year, of course, because of the situation. A lot of businesses, a lot of people needed to move to remote, and MS Teams was one of the solutions that, of course, many people used. So about the agenda, we only have 30 minutes, so yeah, I need to compress the content a bit to be able to cover everything. Yeah, I will describe a bit the basics, more in a more general term. Yeah, how to set it up, what is important, how to look for, what are common mistakes that people might make on the way to configure it, set it up, cover a bit of advanced topics, also show a bit where maybe there's still some room for improvement, where at least in my experience, we are not yet there. Yeah, and we'll close a bit with debugging. Yeah, information, maybe some pointers how to debug the whole stuff. As usual, of course, in the end we will have a question and answer session. So looking forward to questions there as well. Yeah, as Daniel said, I'm a long time with the Kamailio project, started in 2007. I'm a core developer of the project, worked in many different areas, and also security related topics we discussed yesterday also briefly. I started 2 years ago a company called Gilava and also provide services here in that area. So of course, just a few generic words. Of course, I would prefer if everybody use open and federated system for their private and also business communication. That's of course true for most of the people probably in this room. In our space, they would agree to that, I think. But of course, you know how the situation is, especially in the business world. There's Microsoft is the preferred software supplier here for several reasons. And of course, Kamailio as a project, as a product that is used a lot for interoperability solutions. We of course need to have an answer here. It's necessary to have an answer for that. So using Kamailio as a session border controller for Teams, it's not particularly hard, but you need to have a solid knowledge in zip, in a Kamailio, and also preferable in your PBX or another back-to-back user agent. This is generally true for Kamailio, and of course, as you know, it's not a project where you can just write up from the beginning, do highly complex stuff. You need to learn a bit about the standards, etc. But especially for this area, it's important. If you don't fulfill these requirements, my suggestion would be to either to get somebody to build it for you, or maybe looking for somebody to implement a commercial solution for you. There are also plug-and-play solutions, at least they promise it, that you can use to interact with the teams. There's no secret source, I'm afraid. One need to follow the available documentation on this topic, and also spend a fair amount of time in interop debugging. Of course, because of your setup might be special, there might be some special things that you do. Okay, why people want to do that? Of course, Microsoft Teams, being a closed system by default, only supports calls, audio and video calls in your own organization, and to guests that you might invite into your meetings. If you want to call to the outside world, one option is to use the Microsoft Cloud offering. They call it calling plan. It's basically that you get some numbers and some minutes from them. Yeah, but it's not available in every country, and you might have already a PSTN provider in your company. You might have already a contract there for some years. You don't want to lose that, or you want to keep it. You might have some PBX functionality in your existing system. Maybe you provide services related to that to your customers, so you have some reasons to still want to use that. So of course, Microsoft anticipated that, and they call it direct routing, how to interface with the outside world, with the outside PSTN world. It's called direct routing. And you can connect your Teams infrastructure, or like the Teams infrastructure, then to your PSTN network connection to basically place receive calls, audio calls. There's no video support right now, at least not I'm aware of. They might be offering it in the future, but right now it's only audio. And it works by directly connecting the session border controller to the Microsoft Cloud infrastructure. In the past, if you might have some experience with Skype, there were some hybrid options that you need to do, or you could do, but in this case, it's just the cloud, and you connect it to the session border controller in your premises or in your data center. Yeah. So this is the basic setup. So you have the Microsoft phone system on the one hand, you have the PSTN network, which we all know, on the other hand, and sitting in between Kamailio and some third-party PBX. Why this is necessary, I will explain later. And of course, you might have also some interfaces to the old world, some ATAs, and some adapter to the analog telephone systems, etc. So, I want to also cover a bit the ups and downsides of this approach. To the upsides of this of using Kamailio, it's of course more flexible and might be also more secure as commercial offerings. in many scenarios, it will be considerably cheaper as commercial SBCs. Commercial SBCs usually use some kind of channel-based model, which of course scale not well if you go to higher channel counts. You might already use Kamailio internally. Then of course makes sense to use it also for other purposes. And as we all know, Kamailio is of course more compatible to other parts of the voice over IP infrastructure. It's being a highly flexible solution. On the downsides, it's not certified from Microsoft. What does it mean? And so Microsoft certifies a set of session border controller as Microsoft hasn't done that yet for Kamailio. In fact, if we want to do it, we need to approach Microsoft and also probably pay for that. Kamailio is a highly flexible solution. It can be, of course, configured and adapted to many different scenarios. So it would be quite difficult to get a certification. Here we would need to restrict it to a really certain use case. It's part of a product or whatever. It could be done from a company, but from an open source point of view, we don't think it's really a good idea. It's probably not meaningful to do. Kamailio will not support all Microsoft Teams modes yet, at least according to my experience. I'm interested to get some other information from other people that might have tried different things. And of course, it's not an integrated solution, as there are some other appliances out there. How you set it up for Kamailio? Of course, you need a Kamailio server. I think this is obvious. My suggestion would to start with the default configuration, or you might have already some configuration in-house developed that might be adapted to your needs. You will need a PBX as well, or access to another back-to-back user agent. Why this is necessary, or at least recommended from my side. Like for both basic call scenarios, Kamailio will work just fine. But if you have more complicated call transfer scenarios, it's really beneficial to have a proper back-to-back user agent that can do the heavy lifting regarding the, well, not heavy lifting, but can do the abstraction regarding the call, transfer, refer, handling, and other stuff. These are topics which Kamailio, of course, is not that specialized in. There might be APIBANs. For TLS, my recommendation would be to use Let's Encrypt. You can also use it without any problems. It's not yet listed, I think, on from Microsoft as recommended certificate authority, but in my experience, it works pretty well. Many people are using it. You can use a standard certificate. You only need a wildcard certificate if you want to go for multi-tenant. Yeah. You need to implement options handling. So you need to send options ping to Microsoft Teams and also answer to the options pings that you get from Microsoft. It works both ways. And if you do that, then Microsoft will recognize your session border controller and shows it as active in the console. After you have set it up in the Microsoft configuration, I will come to that in a moment. You need to specify the full qualified domain name of the server in the contact. This is important for Microsoft that they can basically detect your SBC and also find the correct tenant in your Office 365, in their Office 365 infrastructure. Kamailio also needs to route the calls to Teams with a proper record route header. This is another, some kind of security mechanism that Microsoft require in order to properly detect and route the calls. Microsoft has decided, which I like in my opinion, this was a good move. Microsoft has decided to only go for encrypted calls, encrypted media, not only TLS, but also SRTP. So we need to set up an RTP engine also to encrypt and decrypt the media going back and forth to teams and to infrastructure. Even if your infrastructure fully supports SRTP, my recommendation would be to use RTP engine anyway, because Microsoft is not really flexible with regarding to codecs, and it's much easier that way to set it up. In the areas that I mentioned, like sending the contact header, setting a proper record road header, it's really important to use the full qualified domain name, not the IP. Otherwise, you will get some issues in the call setup. The 200 OK or ACK routing might not work, and things like that. And then, of course, you need to use dispatcher to route the calls to teams. I didn't included all the configuration examples here into this presentation. This is all available since several months in my blog. I will have a link later in the presentation as well for that. Okay, so far from the Kamailio side. From the Microsoft side, of course, you need a Microsoft Windows machine. This is also obvious. It's possible to do most of the configuration today in the Teams admin console over the web interface. But in some areas, you need to do it as well with PowerShell and the Skype for Business plugin. This is a special plugin you can download from the Microsoft site. For testing, it's also recommended to have a native Teams client. This makes it much easier, basically to test the scenarios, to test your system. Regarding Microsoft licenses, you need to have Office 365 E3 or E5. E3, you need an additional add-on. It's called Phone System in English, Telefonsystem in Deutsch. Probably another names in other languages. In the past, some other licenses worked, but this was the last information that I got also from the documentation. This should work. The licenses that worked for me in the past, the different licenses, now they don't work anymore. You need to register the domain of your SBC, the full qualified domain name, basically in your tenant, especially if it's different from your tenant. It works in the Teams, in the Office 365 admin console. You need to provide some kind of DNS authentication, similar to, for example, Let's Encrypt. I do it. You need to insert some secrets in your DNS to prove that you own the DNS, and then Microsoft will add the DNS name to your tenant, basically. You need to register the SBC with PowerShell, or you also in the Team admin console. You need to assign a phone number to the test user. If you use phone numbers, it's important to use this international format with a plus, like in Germany, +49 123, etc. Microsoft requires that you have a plus here. Also, if you receive calls from the PSTN that might be in another format, you need to do some normalization here to send it in the correct format to Teams. After you have done all this configuration in the Microsoft and have set up Kamailio, of course, in the previous step, your SBC should be active in the Teams admin console. It looks like that. What we see here is the parallel calls. It's in German. Just did a screenshot a few minutes before this talk. You see the parallel calls. We did some tests. The colleague did some tests. You see the full qualified domain name of the SBC. You see that it's active. You see if there's a TLS issue, it will also show up here. So this is the main overview where you can see and notice if your SBC is active. It will take some time after you started the Kamailio that it shows up as active. Depending on the load of the backend, it might even take some hours. So we need to be a bit patient. It's a cloud infrastructure. It's a black box. You can't look into it. You need to be patient. Regarding the PBX, you need to set up a PSN trunk in your PBX. as mentioned before, of course, we could use the UAC module in Kamailio to use that. But in my experience, it's much more reliable regarding user agents, regarding different scenarios in the teams, call transfers, to use PBX to set up your PSTN trunks there. You need to create an association between Kamailio and the PBX, obviously, to allow calls going back and forth. And of course, routing the calls to your PBX. If you're using the default configuration, you can use it, for example, with the PSTN route, which is in the default config. And of course, if there are incoming calls from the PSTN coming in over the PBX, you need to route it to the Kamailio, of course. So for basic scenarios, this is enough, and more integration can be, of course, done in later steps like refer handling, call transfer, scenarios, etc. So with that, you should be able to, basically test the basic call scenarios, incoming calls and outgoing calls. If it works, you should verify the signalization with the usual debugging tools. You can use SNGrep, other tools, of course, that you all know and might already use. As I mentioned before, configuration examples, also some PowerShell snippets can be all found in my blog. I have a link in the last slide of this presentation. So far to the basic stuff, now to a bit more advanced topics. Also to show what's possible, what's still open right now. So basically there are different modes, how you can set up a session border controller for teams. There are different modes regarding call transfer and also different modes regarding the media flow. So regarding call transfer, the easiest way to do it's without refer. This way, Microsoft will just just create a new invite if you do a call transfer with the replace option and terminate the old call and invite the new call. Microsoft will in this option will do the call transfer internally. Just to illustrate it a bit, I also included some information from the Microsoft page here. Gave also the link on the left side. We have here a standard call setup, as you all know, nothing uncommon. And then Microsoft will just set up a new invite. Do the normal call setup for this invite with a referred by and a replace. And then the call will be the new call will be take place, and the old call will be basically byte ended. The more advanced and also recommended method is to use the refer method, and here Microsoft will just send a refer to the SBC and expect the session border controller. Session border controller in this picture means, of course, the Kamailio, to handle the transfer fully. So the Kamailio, or like the PBX behind it, in this case, would need to process the refer and create the new invite to invite the new participant, and then do the notifies during the refer process to notify for the 100, 100, 180, 88, 183 if there's one, and the 200, and do the refer handling all internally. As I said, this is the recommended method, and it's also the recommended method if you want to benefit from additional, or like this additional integration into your existing PBX. If you don't need it, then you don't need to implement it, of course. If you block the refer in the signalization, then Microsoft will not send you a refer, and it will do everything by themselves in their infrastructure. Regarding the media processing, there are also two different modes. The one is called media bypass, the other non-media bypass. In the media bypass mode, this is the mode where all media flows between the Teams endpoint and the SBC. This is handy, especially if you have like a more geographic distributed scenario where you have maybe some office in Germany, maybe an office in New York, in the States, and you don't want that all the media goes over the Teams infrastructure, but you might might to keep the media local, like that the US media stays in the US and the German media stays in Germany. And there's a non-media bypass mode. Here the RTP traffic flows between the Teams client, the media processor, and the SBC. Media processor in this context means basically the media processing entity in the Office 365 cloud. So with Kamailio RTP engine, so far, right now, in my experience, you can only use the non-media bypass mode. This might be an area where some more research and more debugging might be needed. How does it look like? I also included 2 pictures here. This is a non-media bypass. You see just one media stream here for the call forking to the different team clients. It's also from the Microsoft documentation. The Microsoft documentation is actually quite good. There's a lot of diagrams. It's all managed in GitHub. So Microsoft has, I think, come a long way here regarding documentation and openness in the documentation. This is the media bypass mode. You see 2 media streams here. You find more information if you're interested about all the details. Also, of course, in the link below. So far to the 2 different modes for the call transfer and also the media handling. I will probably do some more research in this area, but again, of course, I'm interested what have other people done here. If you are looking into these call transfer scenarios, you can make sure that you test it really thoroughly. Test unattended transfer and attended transfer. They might behave differently, at least in my experience. Also, if you do you can do like a conference with 3 or more participants, make sure you test that as well. This might also behave different than a simple call transfer. If you have special requirements regarding like call forwarding information in the SIP signalization or also caller identity, like peer-asserted identity topics, you can configure that also with PowerShell. One easy topic, but still, I think it has a lot of visibility to the users. By default, you will have some music on hold from the Microsoft Cloud, and this can be, of course, also replaced. And you can use your PBX if you already have one. Of course, you can use that as well. This can be all done by PowerShell. Again, keep in mind, if you change something here, it will take some time, some minutes, in some cases even some hours. Yeah, Microsoft has an interesting way of speaking zip. It's really easy to recognize. Just put some one message here just to highlight it a bit. It speaks zip in capital letters. This makes it easy to recognize in a trace. And it's speaking zip over HTTPS port. This is really interesting. You will get some re-invite after the call was set up in many cases to do re-invite regarding that one. So far, I think for the example, I omitted the SDP here just to not have too much information. have a look to the watch. I think I need to hurry up a bit. Yeah, to my last part regarding debugging, the most difficult part obviously is of course to debug the TLS encrypted communication that goes from two teams. For the other stuff, of course, you can use usual tools, SNGrep, TCP dump, etc. For TLS, you can use zip dump, zip trace. In Kamailio, you can use Humea if you have set it up already in your lab. And there's also the possibility to use the core extension module with the network event routes to have more insight into the message handling. Sometimes Microsoft will give you hints in the messages. For example, if you are missing an acknowledge, you will get a helpful message that even spells you out the reason why they are not happy. Sometimes they will also inform you if some headers are missing or some headers are wrong, for example, regarding contact record route. But in some cases, unfortunately, Microsoft will just not reply to your messages, especially in TLS errors. This is really difficult, and black box debugging a lot of fun. I spent many hours looking into traces, trying to figure out how to make it work. But yeah, that's the way it is. As I said, the Microsoft documentation is really extensive and helpful on this whole topic. And a note, even commercial SPCs, based on stories from my customers, which I helped for projects in this area. Even the commercial SPCs have some problems in the past. And if you do set up some setup for yourself, documentation and test protocols are really important. I don't tell you that, but especially for like a bit more complex projects in this area, this is really necessary. Yeah, so that's all from my side. Thank you for the attention. You find all the configuration in the link in the middle on the page. And if you have any questions, just have a look to the contact information below. Just let me know. Thank you.
Thank you, Henning, for a very interesting summary of what is necessary to troubleshoot and to be aware of for integration with MS Teams. I think you have a blog. I'm not sure if a blog post. I'm not sure if you put a link on it with more like snippets and so on.
I will just post it also in the.
We can update it, upload it to Kamailio or during the next days. Should be on scalatan.de, right? Maybe you already have it on the...
I think the link is in the presentation, and I will also post the link in the matrix.
Okay, so I saw a question on YouTube channel, but I think you already addressed it. Do you delete refer from allow header, or did you implement refer processing on Kamailio side? But I think you had something with PBX at some point, and also not sure if you have a YouTube channel open. This is from YouTube channel, no, not from Matrix.
Can you repeat? I'm sorry.
So repeating, do you delete refer from allow header?
Yes.
Or do you...
Yes.
Okay, and then some remarks about licensing that E3 requires audio conferencing plus phone system. This is just for the audience, not a question. If someone wants to know more about licensing policies of
I think you need the phone system, and audio conference is for another thing. I think you need phone system, but at least in my test it worked.
Then a question from the Matrix chat: how do you manage advertised address for multi-tenant systems?
I mean, for multi-tenant systems, I mean, it's a bit difficult to explain it like in one sentence, but for multi-tenant systems, I mean, the preferred way what Microsoft recommend is to have the carrier domain, and then of course have domains below this wildcard domain to use that. And if you look to the Microsoft documentation, what they specify and what they do is they look only for the contact header regarding this lookup for the proper tenant. So you need to insert the proper contact header for the tenants. This is probably try to answer it in a quick way.
Okay, so probably it's time to switch to next speaker, not to bring too much delay. I'm sure Henning will be around here later, or if not, ask on mailing list, and others may be able to answer. Thank you, Henning, for your time and very informative presentation.
Thank you.
Now it's time for Fred, and I'm starting to introduce him by thanking for putting together the infrastructure for this online event by offering the hosting of the Jitsi Meet, and also spending time on setting up software troubleshooting yesterday when we had some issues. So a lot of work done by Fred behind for this event, and not only for this event, actually he's supporting our project for so many years and spending significant resources, time or financial resources to go to different events worldwide. So I'm really grateful to have Fred around our project, honestly. Fred, now time to go on to the technical side and present us a little bit about a security-related integration of Kamailio. I'll let you disclose more. Many are already aware, but I'm sure it's very useful information for everyone. Thank you, Fred. It's your time.
All right, thank you so much. You should hopefully be seeing my screen. Today's topic is about APIBAN, which is something that was brought to all of us because of attendance at conferences and things like that. So it's always exciting when things happen in conferences. I do miss having them live. But in going through that, basically, what is APIBAN? APIBAN is a community sharing of bad actors. It's free. It's hosted and provided by LOD.com, but there's no cost to it. And the goal is to help you protect your system proactively instead of reactively. And then for those that don't know me, my name is Fred Posner. I can be contacted through qxork.com. I love Kamailio. I've been excited to be a user of the project since the early 2000s. And just, I cannot express how much I love this software. And then there's a picture of my beautiful wife and me at the Berlin Wall that we took during Kamailio a couple years ago. So a quick overview of APIBAN. So basically, you have Kamailio, you're most likely connecting to the internet, although of course there are many, many solutions and situations where you would just be internal and not connect to an internet. However, in a lot of use cases, you put your Kamailio to the internet using that as a connecting agent to phones or carriers or what have you. And it's beautiful and it connects and you make people communicate and life is awesome. And then every now and then a bad guy tries to connect to your Kamailio box. And hopefully if you're following examples that we've talked about over the years and even including the default configuration, you're blocking some of these because many people won't even change the user header or, maybe it's a SQL injection that you're just dropping or something like that. So, Kamailio is really good at just blocking the bad guy. But of course, when there's one bad guy, there's generally lots and lots and lots of bad guys. And so over the years, we've seen that, you could just throw up a Kamailio and, almost set a timer to see how quickly you're going to start getting scanned from notorious people trying to find out if they can hijack your system and make calls or register users or do whatever they would like to do with access to a SIP box. And so the thought has always been, well, let's go ahead and make some honeypots. And with that is exactly what we've done with APIBAN, is that we have honeypots throughout the world that are just collecting people that are scanning SIP traffic and things like that. And then we collect that data and share it. So, if you hit one of the honeypots, then we'll share that IP address. You connect your Kamailio to APIBAN by just pulling through an API the list of IP addresses, and then you can pre-block them using HTables with Kamailio. And then just when that source IP connects to you, you can immediately drop it. And then because it's Kamailio, if you're running more than one, you could always share this information with all of your other Kamailios in real time with DMQ. And that's one of my favorite aspects of Kamailio. In fact, the brainchild of this was using just your normal IP band that you would use for, flood scanning and things like that, and Pike, and sharing that so that when you attack one of your boxes, you attack all of your boxes, kind of the NATO approach. And but now you can do that same aspect with APIBAN on your record as well. So why APIBAN? Again, it was started and discussions on, probably Astracon, ClueCon, definitely Kamailio World, especially when we were talking a few years back with some of the Homer presentations about being able to perhaps use this as a collective of honeypot information. And the bottom line is that over a beer, we always talk about how we all get scanned. And it's something that we've generally laughed about. And I've always said, hey, wouldn't it be great if we could all share this data? And we always agree that it would be a great idea. And, we have lives and we have commitments, and it just never got done. And last year, right around Thanksgiving time in the US here, I found myself with some extra time and threw together an idea and put it up, and that's the catalyst of APIBAN. Basically, we have a global network of honeypots. Special thanks goes to Ivan Yarko, who has deployed 30 of these. And then we have others as well. And these are systems that should never receive SIP traffic whatsoever. They're just boxes that we've put up, given an IP, and people attack them. We have many in the US. We also have them in the UK, Berlin, Mumbai, Sao Paulo, Paris, Cape Town, Canada, and others throughout the world. And any SIP traffic that comes to them is bad. Again, these should have nothing. And the whole point here was making sure that this information is good, because we're extremely concerned over any potential of getting a valid IP address blocked. So the entire goal is to make sure that we'd rather a bad one get in than a good one be blocked. And in fact, the only good ones that have been blocked has been my own IP address during testing. Well, I've blocked myself, but other than that, no valid IP address has been blocked so far. So we're pretty excited there. The criteria is that when we do collect an IP address, it stays active for 7 days. It can be reactivated, immediately after it expired, but it's active for 7 days. And you retrieve these lists through an API call. So we have a few API calls. One is get banned, and you pull a full list of all the IP addresses that are banned. We cap this at 250 right now in the first full pull. So the full isn't really a full, technically. It's just give me up to 250 addresses, and we do that to prevent some looping. And then you get returned what we call an ID, which is nothing more than a timestamp, and then you get incremental lists based on that timestamp. So then if you throw us back that timestamp that we gave you, that ID, then we give you everything that has been called in since, and then based on that ID, you continue to get new ones as they come out. We do limit your ability to hit the API at 5 requests for every 2 minutes. And, the clock resets every 2 minutes, but right now that's the limit, just to prevent, abuse of our system and keep it up for everyone. And, but you can always get more than one key, and it's a key-based system. So basically you go to our website, which is APIBAN.org, and you put in your name. We don't really care about your name. We do need a valid email to send you the key. Could be a temporary email. Again, we don't care. So you can make just an email that is throwaway or something like that. And then you deploy it. So we'll send you a key, and then from there you can start pulling down through the API. In the scope of this talk today, of course, I'm going to talk about how we would deploy it with Kamailio. But this being said, the API of APIBAN is that, you can use it through an API. And as I said, there's methods of checking for a full list as well as checking an individual IP. So you could always check a specific IP if you'd like to just know if this specific IP is banned or not. And, you could just do that through a simple API call. But here we'll talk about deploying it through Kamailio, and we also provide a standalone client. If you didn't want to use it into Kamailio, but you wanted to use, let's say, IP tables to block it, we could do it there for you as well. On the Kamailio, that's embarrassing for me. On the Kamailio integration, we basically use the following modules. HTable, HTTP client is the example I've used, but you could use a sync client if you wanted as well, or instead of, or I guess you could use them both if you felt like doing things really oddly. We use Jansen to parse the results, and our timer so that you could schedule a pull every X seconds. And then if you wanted to share this information with others, you could use DMQ. Because it's Kamailio, I'm not telling you that you have to do it this way at all. This is the example that I've made. One of my favorite things of Kamailio is that you can do it however you'd like, especially if you're using Kemi or something like that. You could parse it however you wanted. If you wanted to just use it within the Kamailio config with these 4 or possibly 5 modules, you could really have a proactive system there that's running. And again, hopefully you're already running HTable anyway, because HTable is the bomb. I mean, that thing is probably my favorite module, but that's another story. So again, you'd want to increase your max while loops to 250, or make sure that you have it at least 250, and that's because APIBAN will return you up to 250 IP addresses, and in the example that we provide, you're going to cycle through those 250 one at a time, so you'll need a max while loop of at least 250. Otherwise, you'll stop short. We use a HTable just called APIBAN. Could be whatever you want. I do a size of 11 because that will seem to always cover whatever we've had. We haven't had to increase past 11 yet. And remember, those are just exponentials, so that's 2 to the power of 11. And then we also use a very small APIBAN CTL or control which is just basically your way of controlling or saving that ID, and it's a numerical value. And so, I just make it a size of 1, and then we put the IP or the ID that was returned into the CTL. And then our timer is to sync your new addresses. I think in the example that we have online, we have it set to 5 minutes, but you could do it every 60 seconds, 45 seconds, however you want. Just remember you're limited to 5 requests every 2 minutes. And the bottom line on it is, once you have this information in your H table, just like you would with APIBAN example in the config, in the default config, if that source IP address is listed in APIBAN, then just drop it. I'm recommending an exit here instead of a response, only because these people are known scanners, and the goal here would be hopefully you're getting this before you've ever been hit by them, and maybe they just don't think you're a phone system and they'll move on. But this being said, you could always respond with however you want it, whether it's a 200 to end the connection if it's TCP, or do a different response based on the protocol. Again, with Kamailio, you have so many options that it's truly whatever would work best for your needs. And online, we do have some examples. So in APIBAN.org on the doc, and I think there's only 3 pages for the whole site. There's the key request, the homepage, and this doc page. So I'm sure you can find it without the doc.html as well. And then on GitHub, in github.com/Palner/APIBAN, we have the example there as well. Now, some people have asked, what if I'm not running Kamailio? And when I get this question, my first reaction is, huh? No Kamailio? Why wouldn't you deploy Kamailio? So again, Kamailio does so many things to help protect your system and to help facilitate communication that I just don't understand why you wouldn't run it. But to each their own. If you do have the need of not running Kamailio, or would like to run this in your own outside of Kamailio, so on your Kamailio deployment, if you wanted to run this, for example, in IP tables or something like that, we have a couple bash clients. We have IP tables, and then we just had submitted an NFT example, and then there's a Go client. And a huge thank you to Sean McCord. I wrote the Go client to help me learn Go. And then Sean McCord really showed me how much I have to learn in Go, and just made it more beautiful. So that was a great help for me. And that just integrates with IP tables. And both of these will create the chains for you and just handle it as well. And then, you could either cron tab it or run in the system MD or however you'd like to determine how you would like to run from there. Unfortunately, there's not going to be any cookies or anything like that, but I did want to make sure that I left at least 5 minutes for questions. Again, I'm really excited to be able to share something with the community. As someone that's not a coder, it's difficult to be able to share with to contribute to Kamailio other than documentation, which again, there's always need for documentation, and we would love if people helped us with documentation. But so it's nice to be able to give something back to the community and to share this community that I love so much. So thank you. And with that, I'm open for any questions.
Thank you, Fred. Thank you. You actually had quite a lot of questions on both YouTube channel I see here. So I'll repeat it. I would like to know, what do you think about metrics, about ban IPs, and also show user agent list just for information, from Hector Ventura Reyes. So your opinion on collecting metrics and sharing details about user agents whatsoever.
Right now, we're not collecting user agents. I think it is a nice idea. In monitoring this kind of information, I no longer feel that user agent by itself is the best method, as we've seen impersonations of valid user agents on serious attacks. They'll emulate Cisco or valid phone clients as part of the attacks. I've seen Polycom agents and things like that. But that being said, adding that matrix is an absolute excellent idea that I'll absolutely look at putting into the future for some sort of data to contribute.
Okay, I see from Tori, but marked as answered. Do the ban IP ever expire? And I think you answer it. Now from Ali Shirvani, do you support gray listing mechanism?
Not right now. We don't support right now. It's just a binary bad, good, or bad, I don't know system. The next aspect is to create a community shared model where non API ban honeypots could contribute to their collection needs, and then you could do some sort of sliding scale, whether it's okay, well, 4 other community members have seen this IP, so let me go ahead and block it. So that would be the closest thing to a gray list, and that should be in the future.
Okay, the next one from one of so many user matrix. Can you use APIBAN data as a DNS blacklisting, I suppose?
Rob Thomas with Clearly IP has integrated this. He hasn't put it out with our project yet, but he just did something this week where he's integrated with Bird for BGP peering. So yes, you can use this data however you'd like, and that's one of the beauties of it being provided as in a simple API format. So yes, there's already people putting it into BGP, and you could blacklist it however you'd like.
Okay, from Tori, I jump it over initially. Is there a need to access the API immediately? It seems updating once a day, so it would be sufficient.
I would do it way more than once a day. I would do it no more than 5 minutes. We get updates. Okay. I would say you probably get over 50 updates a day.
Question with this answer from the same user, just to stay for the recording. Why is this done as a Kamailio module and not on the firewall level? With the answer, okay, I see now there is an IP tables module, so that's possible, and just have it in the recording. Yeah,
and just to clarify, it's not a module. One day I hope to be good enough as a coder to make a module. It's absolutely not a module. It just uses existing awesome modules from Kamailio that are available. And
a remark from Oli, if a server gets listed and wants to get out, there is no information on the website how to clear an IP.
That is correct. Right now, there is no information on clearing an IP because at no point should you have ever sent a SIP request. So when we go into the community trust model, there will absolutely be a method of removing an IP. Other than that, the contact information from APIBAN.org is on the website, which is just the support at LOD.com. If someone believes that they were proper in scanning one of our honeypots and would like to be removed, they can contact there and I will consider it. but you should not be sending SIP traffic to that's unwanted. And if you don't do that, then you won't be listed.
Okay, then from Ali Shirvani, how do you protect your honeypots to be identified from botnets?
How do I protect the honeypots from being identified by botnets? We don't know. I mean, they could find us. One of the ways that we do it is by having many honeypots out there in many different regions, and they're not static. They change and they move around. But honestly, I don't care if they know about one of my honeypots.
Okay, from Mark Boise. APIBAN would be cool to collect fail authentication metrics also. Me seeing a fail authentication from an IP is possible on an incorrect configured user. Many of us seeing a failed authentication from the same IP, it's probably a bad actor. But here you'll have to somehow share this authentication.
So that is one of the big concerns over having other people participate in the project is what if one of your users, fat fingered their password and then you block them? We don't want to block any legitimate people. So the honeypots that we have are not PBXs and they're not valid SIP trunks. So no one should be authenticating to them whatsoever. So any authentication there is not an incorrect configured user. It's a malicious attempt. And so that's how we're doing it here. In the community shared model, it would be because that same IP did it on multiple systems.
Okay, so I see now a question on the YouTube channel, more of them, and probably we'll take 1-2 more, and we'll have to continue during the open discussion with others. Sergio Pojoga, just for fun's sakes, what's the up-to-date size of APIBAN hash table? Otherwise, how many BAN IPs as of today, if you can have an idea?
All right, so I appreciate you calling out my own improper preparation for this and not looking this morning. Last time I checked, it was around 300. It fluctuates. The most I've ever seen is about 500. And the lowest has been under 200, but it does fluctuate. And unfortunately, I don't have an answer for that. But that would have been a cookie question.
And from David Villasmil, how do we contribute? And that's
in the future. We're going to be opening a community shared model for contributions. Otherwise, ideas on how we can make it better would always be accepted, as well as the clients are open source. So any assistance there in bringing it to more endpoints would be appreciated. Right now, because of the trust concerns, we're not accepting just general honeypot information. Okay,
Fred, I think it's time to end this session, and there are a few other remarks that probably we can discuss on this topic or general security during the open discussion party-like session later today, not to be delayed with the schedule. Thank you so much for very useful information and putting all the pieces together for Kamailio APIBAN, but also the other VoIP projects can easily integrate with this service. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Now we have the next session. I hope Yuri is already in.
Yep, I'm here.
You can unmute and turn video on if you want. Otherwise, you can start with the slide sharing.
Yeah, I'm here.
Thank you, Yuri, for spending time on preparing for this event and willing to share your experiences with Kemi. And I was really happy to see someone else in the initial proposal at Kamailio World in Berlin coming and speaking about this framework. And this with testing, it's something that I'm also looking for, because sometimes it's a little bit harder to discover misconfiguration, like using the wrong function name in this dynamic languages comparing with the config file. On the other hand, it's easier to troubleshoot at runtime with different mocking or with different debuggers. So thanks for again for joining us. I let you start the presentation.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. So I will share my screen and we'll start presentation. Just give me a second for this. Yes, let's go with this. Their screen. So I hope everyone sees this. Yeah. So a little bit about me. So I'm a voice and video over IP software engineer. So usually I'm working with Kamailio. So I actually work with Kamailio quite like past maybe 8 years or even 9. Yeah, and I started to work with Lua. It came from the Asterisk actually, because Asterisk actually also has Lua modules that allows you to build dial plan. And then when Kamailio came with Kemi, I was really excited about that, and I started to use it immediately and built a lot of services based on Lua. Usual routers, even chat application, and APIs. Kamailio with its own API on HTTP, and yeah. So all this experience gave me some advantages and disadvantages of using scripting language and Lua itself. And so the biggest, I would say, advantages of the usage of the Kamailio scripting and scripting itself is here. So I will just start with it. So it's first of all a real language. You can do whatever you want. You have a lot of possibilities. It's in that case, it's more flexible environment against the native scripting. So you not depend already so much from the models that already built in. So you can prepare your own. Then Kemi is really nice engine, I would say, and it explains really good. So sometimes it's lack of documentation, but it has links to the documentation for the same function, not for the same, but for this particular function in native scripting, and it's not big difference in between each other. And you always can understand what is for that, what for what, and how to use it. I think 99%. And so extendable instruments, as I've said, so whatever you don't have in Kamailio models, you are able to implement it easily by yourself. So what this means? This means that actually in my latest projects, I even didn't use text ops model, for example, at all. So Lua for me much better in that case. So I started to parse SDP by my own instead of using Kamailio built-in models, because of I need some kind of really tricky things to do with SDP. And then I decided, why not go with Lua. Last one is ability to use Kamailio models as basis for extensions. So what that means. So for example, if you need something asynchronous, you can use async module, or you can use async HTTP request as basis of building, for example, third-party authentication service based on HTTP, like example, and so on. So there is a lot of possibilities that you can do. And your hands become more free. and real language. Lua itself is really easy language. I'm not against the Python, for example, or JavaScript, but Lua seems really easy to learn and really fast and really easy to go. So this is about advantages of using Lua scripting versus native scripting in Kamailio. So advantages never comes without disadvantages. So disadvantages, there is also a couple of them. So first of all,
Did you get disconnected or?
Yeah, I think we dropped audio from him.
Yuri, are you still there? Are you muted somehow?
His network is gray, lost. I think we lost him. When you give him a few seconds to reconnect.
Yeah. Okay, so hopefully Yuri will be able to join soon. Meanwhile, if anyone wants to ask something, we got someone back in. Yuri, you are back. You are muted automatically if it was you joining back. Not yet. I'm gonna ping on Matrix.
I really hope he's just not continuing the presentation.
It looks like he really lost completely connection.
Let's we talk about SIP and quick. Yeah, SIP it's quick and that's it, or quick it's SIP. From Ali Shirvani, I think Ole proposed yesterday during the open discussion, or somehow suggested that when I asked if they have seen deployments of using DTLS or SCTP as a transport for SIP, Ole showed interest more into looking at using quick for SIP. And yeah, maybe it's in many cases just chicken egg problem. Who starts first to implement it, client or the server? Probably a matter of interest from the companies. Most of the core networks are practically running now on private network with SBCs or edge proxy doing gatewaying between TLS on the external world and likely UDP on the internal private network, which scales quite well. Let's see if there will be more interested in getting quick or other transport layers in the VoIP world. So I don't see any reaction from Yuri, which is not good. Maybe I'm gonna send an email.
I've reached out to him on Matrix.
I also
haven't.
And he responded?
No. But we can use this time to let people know that they can communicate to us at Matrix channel.
Sorry, was it a long time ago?
Yeah, it was probably 3-4 minutes at least.
3-4 minutes, okay. So sorry, it's probably here, right?
No worries, no worries. It's how the distributed world works.
So did I step on disadvantages or where?
Maybe
it was on the disadvantages slide.
On the disadvantage slides. Thank you so much. So yeah, so so going through the disadvantages, there are a lot. I will share the presentation. Will not go through it again. Yeah. So and that's why was created Test Suite. So Test Suite created to simplify development process. It was an idea to start to emulate end-to-end tests, and it's ready for unit testing. So you can wrap up one function and check the tests, and it has to be so it's focused on configurations and writing more code. So you don't need to write a lot of code. You can just configure how tests will run, pass some parameters, and it will run instead of making making more code and yeah, just adding more wrappers. So so let's look on the development flow. I will a little bit explain how it will improve. It has to improve your development process. So in usual development, usual development flow is uploads CFG file. Then we starting call, we run the flow, we try to find the issue in the whole flow, and then fixing issue, uploading CFG file on the Kamailio, start call, and etc. etc. So start call with anything, developer or CPU or whatever, or your own script. Yeah. So development flow with tests looks like the bottom one. So it's we just writing some function. And yeah, tests. We also writing tests for it. I'm included it in one step just because of this also coding. So it's some kind of coding process. So then we just running tests, we catch an issue and fix an issue. So at least one step less. So if one step less, so it's definitely a good idea to improve your time wasting on the things that can be automated, let's say, and decreased by time, not time to remove time-consuming things. So and the end-to-end testing flow is also really important to understand how it works. So usually how we're making tests, right? We making a call or with something, yeah. We sending this call to the Kamailio. Kamailio parses packet data, puts all this data from the packet into the variables. Then we handling in a configuration file in the green in this green area. We manipulate somehow with headers or with data. Then Kamailio builds new packet and then it sends. And what we're doing usually we're checking the results. So we're checking, okay, here's contact here changed, route here removed just because of pass through Kamailio. So it's done. So this is end-to-end testing flow. Let's thinking about what it's not our under our control, like administrators or like configuration scripters. So we definitely don't have any. We're not involved in the parsing packet data, right? Because if Kamailio does it for us, we can control it. And when Kamailio glues all the things together after data handling. So in that case, we can say that these parts we definitely can affect it anyhow, definitely with our configuration, right? So it's automated things that Kamailio does for us. So why we have to involve the things into our job, because it's already automated, right? So, and this was my idea to build test suite, just because of if we will remove all these unneeded parts. So if we will concentrate on this picture, we will see that actually what we are doing here, we actually taking parameters from this packet named method, let's say, right? And then we're checking how this packet was changed. So we actually checking how changed past parameters. So if to simplify this picture, we will see that regarding configuration, we will see that we passing actually source IP and contact address, and we checking, so okay, contact was changed here, nice. And we passing route headers, and we see, okay, route header was removed, and we have only one route header. So this is main idea of the emulating of this end-to-end testing. And if in this case, if we will look a little bit closer on this, we will see that end-to-end testing becomes like a unit testing, to be honest, because of we calling just one function that goes through the other, that calls other functions, and yeah, so this is this snowball counts, and then at the final result we just facing changes. That's it. So we just throwing out all things that hasn't been involved, and we end that out of our control actually. And yeah, so this is slides, and for now I wanted to demonstrate a little bit how it works. And for now it's on the GitHub. It's available for yeah, I'm online, cool. Yeah, it's available here. I will share a link a little bit later in the our matrix chat. So yeah, let's go a little bit through. So it is really easy to go. So when you're using Kamailio with Lua or with Python, you always have this mod param. So for example, for up Lua, we have some mod parameter load, and we're loading the script. So if the script is this is an initial file which usually contains KSR request route, reply route, and other bunch of main routes that are global function actually in terms of Lua. So it means that they are available everywhere. So, and this file we're loading, and this file is key for us because of, here is some example. What does test suite? It just included here, as we see, and then we just run it. So we can run it even with even during running on a Kamailio. It will not be executed anyhow. So it actually will be executed, but will do nothing. So yeah. So and this means what you need to do is just upload to your near your file, example Kamailio Lua in that case, you need to upload this test suite from the GitHub. It doesn't in a Lua rocks yet, so I will put it later on. So this test suite you have to upload near and just include it in your file and then call it. So this run function is actually the only one function that you have to call. It contains one parameter, this module my model. So it made because of for example, for me it's not really good to keep all my configuration in one file. I usually split it in the different files and then include it into the Kamailio main file, and this table, which is only one parameter of the run function, it has to contain all these modules, has to be included to test as well. So we will be able to test these modules as well. That's my idea. And the second thing is probably most difficult thing from the first time, but it's easy to configure, and I think, is write tests with write tests. So it's configurable, as I said before. That's how it looks like. So here are two tests. So we have module. So I test my module. So this one, which lays near the example of Kamailio and which included here. So it's here is a really simple module with two functions. Yeah, just first function just runs, second function just returns some result. Yeah, and what we have to do, we just have to create our test description for, let's say, for my module. Yeah. So what it includes, so there are two required parameters, it's description and tested function. So here is testing function that include in global variable Kamailio, and then it goes to my module, and then it goes to the tested function one. So it basically links to this particular testing function one. And the second function here is test function 2. Yeah, so we just will check returned result. So I will comment here everything for now, just to I will do it even like that, just to not call this this route. And I will show you some output. Yeah, so here is a Docker file that gives me possibility to abstract from my local environment and run it easily. Docker file also in the container. It's really easy. So I just installing here all needs I need. So yeah, git lua rocks and lua51, and I need also lua JSON for some things for the testing suite. And when I run it, yeah, it just, you see, it runs those functions, and yeah, so here shows which algorithm I will use. So default is same, not default. Other algorithm I have is not same. For now, I have just two functions. Usually, it's in 90% it does its job really well. So we have two tests that was passed, and in one module I added internal logging. In one function, sorry, I added internal logging, and it shows output of my function, which will be shown if we will run this function with a Kamailio, for example, in the logs. It will be shown as well. So this is some basics, and let's go a little bit to more extended thing. This request route, it contains first of all, this function I commented. I will comment it a little bit later. Yeah, but I will include this module. So this is init Lua. Tests init is the main file where your tests has to be included. Description you see is the same. So we still have test, we have description, tested function, but here a bunch of new parameters which also described in README. So it's a expected results and result container. So as Kamailio works, you know, so it, for example, if we need to put some data into the variable, or some function puts some data into the variable, we have to somehow then get this data from this particular variable. It's kind of storage, so it's not actually variable. So this means that this test suite gives us possibility to do this, and it contains mock of Kamailio with some already predefined functions. Modules, it's actually here. Here is mock. So here is main Kamailio mock. We see here is variables, has some default values, or we can redefine it. Or yeah, we can use some modules that are already predefined here. As you see, so we can describe some parameters. For example, we can describe here, let's say, source IP address. Yeah, it will be 1 1 1 1 2 3 4, and it will be shown as shown for us here, for example. So we get source IP address, so that means we pass in source IP address that has to be checked, and yeah. Let's see. Sorry, a little bit hurry because of 2 minutes left. Yeah. Yeah, and here we will see.
You can spend a bit of more time. We have time after the session to catch up. So.
But yeah, so and if I will run this, yeah. So let me check if I saved. Yeah, I didn't save. So this is source IP address I passed as parameter, and this is known parameter source IP address in a usual Lua Kamailio file, and how we can get it with a Lua configuration, right? And if I will run it, yeah, test running 1 2 3 4. So here I passed it, and this now we can check the source IP address and do whatever we usually doing with source IP addresses, right? Checks, check fail to ban, for example. If it's in a ban list, we can write our own ban list in the Lua, for example, and check it here and wrap up it into the testing function. With tests and check this particular function instead of checking all the process. Yeah, and also what we can do, we can also mock up some functions. So for example, usually, so I have predefined HTTP client that does HTTP client query functions that does really easy things. If there is no pass URL or variable which has to be written as a response, it returns -1, or otherwise it returns 1. So it behaves in general like a usual function, but we can redefine its behavior a little bit just for our understanding, for example, how it goes. Here we're calling this function, and we actually expecting that result of this function will be written in a AVP body, right? And reply code will be written in reply code, so as a HTTP client query acts usually. And yeah, we can in this test suite, let's say, redefine some behavior. So we can write, so we have to redefine KSR, HTTP client query, and on what we have to redefine it, we have to redefine it on function, which will set up source reply code with 200, and will set test message as a response body. And I already run here, so there is an output which actually in our example Kamailio here, KSR info to string replace code to string replace body. So if I will, let's say, break everything, I will pass something wrong, so make a mistake, typo, for example. Yeah, it will say that this particular test was failed because of we expected test message but got test message without E, right, because of typo. And the last thing but not least, don't forget, so we can it also can break everything because of this function. For example, this code this module is not included in a whole bunch of modules here, and yeah, so that means that Kamailio will be so this script, sorry, will be broken, and yeah, so it will say that HTTP client undefined. So we still can see usual Lua scenarios. Lua scenarios, how it throws errors. So it's kind of briefly that's it. I would say Yeah. Thank you very much for your attention. If you have some questions, let me know. And this test suite works already on a couple of projects, works really fine, and it works on the pipeline, on the Git, and really easy to use. So don't be afraid to participate, and don't be afraid to use it. I'm welcome for contributing. So I wanted to see it a community useful thing, and yeah. So that's it. Any questions?
Thank you, Yuri. Thank you for this presentation. I find it very useful. So you have it on GitHub too.
Yes. Yes.
So it's your user ID, your typical user ID account. How you pronounce it?
Wait, sorry.
Your user ID.
Obashluk. It's a little bit difficult. It's kind of Russian plane of words. Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to hear how you pronounce it because I'm coming from.
It's Obashluk. Yeah.
I'm a little bit more native speaking. And the question from the list, overall, it's mocks for Kamailio functions. I'm not sure it's in the matrix channel, so it's mocks for Kamailio function. Yes. Right.
Yes, it's about Kamailio function. If question is about that, let me see. Yeah. So yeah, it's a Kamailio function. So you can't mock here. So you can't mock here anything that not that not exported by Lua Kami. So some native functions that wasn't exported by Lua Kami. Of course, you can't check here because you actually can't call them from the Lua.
Okay, and a remark just to have it in the recording from Tori on the channel because he did something similar for Python. The advantage of Kami is you can also unit test individual methods, so probably functions and typical or specific parts of your config. Though both type of testing are very useful.
Yeah.
So others are building for Python. As a matter of fact, it's what I noticed most of the feedback on the mailing list. It's Lua and Python. I'm doing mainly Lua, and some others are actually using JavaScript and Ruby. So practically this supported scripting languages attracted a couple of companies on different direction, and the benefit is that 99% of the functions are the same in all the languages, are only this module-specific function like ksrx, exit or so, so special processing, but also function related to handling SIP traffic, doing routing, authentication are the same in any of these languages with the same kind of parameters. Indeed, because you made a remark at the beginning, the documentation it's not complete, but this references to the original native scripting language corresponding function should be a good starting point. With the time, and hope we can allocate more time for documentation.
But it's actually really useful, this links, because of even there is no documentation, you just go to the link and just see, okay, this function behaves like that, and you're able to like correlate, okay, if this behaves like that, so I definitely have to expect this from this function. So it's a little bit renamed, but anyway.
Yeah, no, it's more than you find with many other projects in terms of documentation. But as Fred said in the previous session, always it's space to improve documentation. So it was on that. I think that's for this session, not to prolong it too much as we are a little bit in the delay. Thank you, Yuri, so much for this one, and looking forward to eventually contribute, but see updates from this little project with mocking support for Kamailio. Now it's time for the next presentation. Hopefully Emmanuel is here. I see him.
Hey,
He
I'm here.
Hey, Emmanuel. Nice
Hey.
seeing you. And
too.
thanks for joining us, spending time to prepare and present today. Emmanuel is one of the active developers in the past years in the Kamailio project. A couple of modules written by him, if I remember, like NSQ was yours, and QA JSON. And this one actually was the reason I thought worth asking Emmanuel to give a presentation about how JSON can be used for a better scalability or distribution of present states across different SIP systems, correlated, of course, with some interest I have seen into the mailing list. And to add another set of thanks for testing my last development on presence for the in-memory presentative records. We all know that presence it's a little bit delicate in SIP, and testing requires many devices. Each device has its own tricks or its own approach sometimes. Not to make it longer, thank you, Emmanuel. I let you take the floor now, and looking forward to your presentation.
Thank you, Daniel, for the introduction. Let me share my screen. Okay, so I'm going to be talking about distributed presence with Kamailio and JSON. A little bit about me. My name is Emmanuel Schmidbauer. I'm a VoIP engineer at TextNow. I have about 10 years experience with SIP. Yeah, I'm still learning. As Daniel mentioned, I'm a Kamailio developer. At TextNow, we have a really cool app that gives you a US or Canadian number, allows you to text or call for free. But we don't actually use presence at TextNow. So this presentation is based on work I did a few years back. What I'm going to talk about is basically some presence modules and distributed presence design. I'm not really going to get into the SIP specifics on how presence works or RFCs or anything like that. So what is presence? Typically, presence is like, in terms of the user experience, is the busy lamp field or BLF, message waiting indicator, or shared call appearance. There's probably more that I haven't used, so I might be missing those out. Shared call appearance is a bit trickier to implement in like a multi-tenant hosted PBX environment. So I'm not really going to touch on that. Basically my experience is with BLF and message waiting indicator. So why Kamailio presence in JSON? Well, it kind of came out of a scaling issue. We originally just had FreeSwitch doing all the presence and registrations. What we noticed though is around 800 users, FreeSwitch just couldn't keep up and it would basically freeze. So we needed a way to scale in like a hosted multi-tenant PBX environment. We were already publishing call events to a message queue using NSQ for our software. So we thought we could just tap into the call events message queue for presence. That would probably be the best solution. So we kind of went with NSQ. NSQ is a real-time distributed messaging platform. Basically, it's like any other message queue, like RabbitMQ. The only difference is there's no broker. So it's a little bit more resilient, in my opinion. So as I mentioned, Sorry. Oops. So as I mentioned, we already had an NSQ cluster. We already had event callbacks hooked in the FreeSwitch ESL for publishing to our cluster. And we looked at what 2600 Hertz was doing with Kazoo. So I want to give a big shout out to them for kind of leading the way in these sorts of things. They're always kind of pioneering in the SIP world. So this diagram kind of shows what presence looked like before with just FreeSwitch, and then after with FreeSwitch and Kamailio. Leveraging Kamailio kind of allowed us to scale. We broke the bottleneck that FreeSwitch had presented, and it worked great for a long time. After some time, we wanted it to be more extensible and less of a black box. We didn't just want to just limit it to NSQ. So we moved some stuff into the already established JSON module, like the transformations. We extended the JSON module API, and I created a new module called Presence User Agent JSON, which basically takes JSON and injects it into the Presence module via the API. So this allowed us to shift the NSQ module to just a message consumer, and using the other modules, JSON, Presence User Agent JSON, and Presence modules, we could control presence. Now you can use other modules to publish presence, and I've done this with EV API, HXX, or HTTP, sorry. Also, if you haven't used EV API, it's super cool. I highly recommend checking that out. The CG Rates team developed a really cool EV API client in Go. So definitely check that out. So this kind of shows a diagram of before with just NSQ, and then after with extending to other modules. And you can see that you do not need to just use NSQ. You can use other modules to control presence. So now I'm going to talk kind of about scaling presence in more general terms. What I have here is an edge proxy, and I think that's pretty typical in like a hosted multi-tenant environment. And the edge proxy kind of serves to remove some overhead for the other nodes in your SIP cluster by handling TLS and TCP connections, and then shifting it to UDP, perhaps on a private subnet. Use the dispatcher module to distribute traffic, and that adds some fault tolerance. If any node behind dispatcher fails, your cluster will still be operational. And we used DMQ userloc to share all the user location data. And you can operate completely in memory, no database backend this way, because if any nodes restarts, it's gonna automatically get up to date with the user location data from the other nodes. This also allowed us to skip authentication on the subscribe requests. Using the user location information, you can basically check if the user's registered to make sure they're authenticated for that subscribe. It's kind of, I think it's an improvement because at scale, skipping auth removes a lot of overhead. There is a little overhead added with DMQ, but I think it's worth the trade-off. So this diagram kind of shows scaling with NSQ. We're distributing the presence from call events in FreeSwitch. We have a Go app that binds to the call events, and it's basically publishing presence messages via NSQD. The presence servers there are just consuming the messages and updating the presence table. And when the user agent subscribes, a notify is sent out, lighting up the line key or not. As I mentioned, the SIP proxy is doing a lot of the lifting on the edge. It's doing server-side NAT handling, so the SIP presence servers don't have to worry about that. They don't have to worry about TCP connections either. And the subscribes are kind of distributed across all the presence nodes using dispatcher. So the SIP proxy role is pretty simple. Right here, it's just distributing the subscribe requests to the SIP presence nodes. One thing I wanted to show here is the notify handling here. We're basically saying if the notify can't reach the user agent, send a reply of 408 to the SIP presence server, and the SIP presence server automatically removes that subscriber from the active watchers table, and that helps with not sending. It stops sending notifies to agents that are no longer reachable, so that helps with scaling a lot. Because if you have a lot of like dead active watchers in the table, you're going to be sending notifies out to basically nobody. So I just wanted to illustrate that. And that's something that's built into the presence module, I found out. And here is the SIP presence role. Basically, it's taking a subscribe. It's checking if the user's registered. If they're not registered, it actually says to retry within 5 minutes. A random period within 5 minutes, because there is a possibility that a race condition can exist where a subscribe hits the presence server before the registration is saved to user location data and propagated to the SIP presence server. But this retry after header tells the user agent to retry within 5 minutes, and hopefully by then the user data is propagated to the SIP presence server. And the NSQ module here use an event route to basically just take the NSQ payload and publish it, which essentially sends the notify. FreeSwitch is pretty simple. It basically uses something called the presence ID channel variable. And this is completely custom, which is great because you don't have to use the SIP username and password. You can create custom presence line keys such as parking. It's really useful. What I'm basically showing you here is ESL connection and then binding to the channel call state. And then these are some of the event headers that are really useful for presence. So if you've got like an app that's binding to the event socket events and parsing the headers, this is probably what you want to use. And I'll show that how that can be propagated with Go. So here's Go struct that basically represents a presence record. Go is really good at marshaling data into just a JSON, and it's also has a great package for NSQ. So basically, you can see here I'm creating a presence record in Go. I'm marshaling it to byte data, and I'm sending it. I'm publishing it to the NSQ topic here, which is Kamailio World. And then I've got Kamailio here, which is subscribing to the topic and a channel. And I won't really get into setting up an NSQ cluster. It's actually really easy. You can check the NSQ documentation for that. But you don't need to use NSQ. Here's an example of just using curl to publish NSQ, or sorry, presence events. And I've done this for load testing. It's actually pretty cool. You can make your phone light up pretty crazy with just doing a ton of curl requests. So it works, but does it scale? It scaled great. We had around 300,000 active watchers in a single cluster with 2 presence nodes. Eventually, disk IO got in our way, which actually surprised us. But when we started digging in, we figured out there's a limitation in the presence module where presence records could not run in memory. The active watchers can run in memory, but the presence records could not. And this meant reading and writing to the database each time a presence update was sent, which when you have 300,000 active watchers can mean a lot of presence records being written to the disk. But Daniel to the rescue, he recently released support for full in-memory mode, which is great. It was on my to-do list for a long time, but he beat me to it, and he probably did it way better than I could ever do it, and way faster. So yeah, as he mentioned earlier, I did help him test it because I think this is a huge win for presence in Kamailio. That's pretty much it. You can contact me at my email. I have a blog, and that's my LinkedIn. I'm probably under time here, but if anyone has questions. Hello.
Thank you very much for the presentation. It was awesome.
Thanks.
Very impressed with your presence work, of course, and very grateful for all the contributions that you've done to the project.
Thank you. Cool. I'm glad you guys all got that, because halfway through I wasn't sure if the streaming was working.
No, it is. Sorry?
It worked great, I think. Yes.
Yeah, it really, I thought looked good. Worked great. I'm trying to see if there's any questions on Matrix. I'm not seeing any. Let me check on YouTube.
Emmanuel, can you stop share screening, because I think we get your screen. Okay.
Sorry about that.
No problem. It's probably better this way. I want to add also my thanks for this presentation, and also that someone got to like 300K of active watchers. That's quite a huge number in my perspective for SIP presence in general. We all know that SIP simple, it's the headache in telephony or voice over IP when trying to implement this BLF and the presence services. Sorry, Fred, that I got over you. I wanted to get the screen sharing off. The other question?
No, I was just looking for any questions that might have been on YouTube. Just positive feedback. It was pretty awesome. Somebody's in the process of implementing this and benefited from your presentation. I loved that the 10 years still learning. It's probably my favorite part of the presentation.
Yeah, to add also that Fred supported the development of the in-memory presence, their representative, because practically when the initial presence was added to Kamailio like 2006, so it was OpenSCR actually, it was taken in consideration that presentity, it's about this XML documents, you know, for just saying online, offline, you put a lot of tags around and the document gets quite big. Back 2005, 6, maybe 7, we are still concerned about like memory usage and so on, and presence were now like the mainstream services. So it was always with the database and an indexing in the cache, like just keeping in the cache. Yes, there is a presented document in the database, but then always query to the database. So that was the limitation. Emmanuel spoke about it. And yeah, this is actually a really great information. I think the community will benefit immensely from this one, because everyone, including myself, sometimes I'm struggling to find the right design on partitioning users, doing data replication, or all these kind of tricks for scalability, and having like a proved concept could save us the time on deciding the way we should move forward on some deployments. Okay,
Cool.
other.
Well, thank you for having me present. I'm truly honored for the opportunity.
You are more than welcome. Actually, you did a lot of contributions, very good contribution to Kamailio, and I mentioned it yesterday during the open discussion, or maybe it was after stopping the recording, but this online event gave the opportunity to bring the developers that maybe they were not able to travel at our events in the past to speak and show what they did. You are at Kamailio World actually, so you came to Berlin, but this like distributed online event makes it easier to put the spotlight on people that contribute to the project, and on this shorter format, we did want to focus on Kamailio only as a presentation, because it would be hard to select from all the other amazing projects out there in the VoIP space, Janus, FreeSwitch, Omer, Asterix, CG Raids. Practically bringing these guys, which are very useful projects for Integrate, will actually fill the entire agenda, in my opinion. So. Okay, so then it's time to move to the next one. Thank you, Emmanuel, and looking forward to future contribution around the project. It's my turn right now for the live demo, and we're actually back on time, on schedule, which allows me to stay longer if I need for my live demo of CAME-CLI. Let me share my screen. Okay, I hope you can see it. Looks so. So for the live demo session, I wanted to show CAME-CLI for a few years now on the mailing list, but also on like Bug Tracker or our online developer meetings or on-site developer meetings. We had this discussion about the control tool, CAME-CTL, which it's from the first days of the project, used to be SERCTL, OpenSCR-CTL, now CAME-CTL, a shell script, which over the time got more like a bash script, having bash as the most popular shell interpreter in the past years, but now that's somehow changing. We have ZSH or Dash or other shells in as default ones in different Linux or BSD or other Unix distributions. And there were reports on issues with CAME-CTL running on these newer shells or alternative shells, as again, we are kind of getting into a bash-like scripting. The tool was doing the job pretty well when you learn it and you are able to give the right input for the parameters, because input validation it's quite limited in bash, and then also formatting the output. It's another limited aspect. Of course, you can rely on different other CLI tools, but from my perspective, it was clear that we should move into another approach. Luckily enough, a few years ago, one of my customers, which was very familiar with Python and Click framework, as they were using it for other internal tools, made a prototype of what's now Camp CLI and shipped the code to me without willing to be involved on any public maintenance or development of this tool. It had a few good comments already embedded in the initial version. I'm not a Python myself, so I did a lot of extension to this tool based on, looking at the existing implemented commands and then adding around that and extending. Practically, this tool is hosted on our organization now, Kamailio organization on GitHub. It's github/Kamailio/CamCLI. It tried to be as much as possible compatible in terms of command line parameters, the format of the subcommands, and so on to help transitioning from the old tool. On the other hand, being written in Python, and the latest version is Python 3, as Python 2 was removed from many stable distribution, Linux distribution by now. We still have a branch for Python 2, but focus it's on Python 3 only. It's definitely better input validation, so you can specify, I expect an integer, I expect a string here, and you can even specify, I expect these values, like enum of string values or a range. It's quite flexible from this point of view. The Click framework from Python, it's amazing from that point of view, makes it very easy to do it by just using declarative arguments and options for the subcommands. And then also the output could be better formatted based on the needs. You can leave it like just pure JSON output from the RPC command. You can make it like more compact in YAML format, and that offer way more flexibility from all the aspects. It interacts with Kamailio via the same module, JSON RPCS. It's the same used by CamCTL, by the older tool. So no big change from that perspective. It should just work with the default Kamailio configuration file. It's using Unix socket instead of FIFO, because from Python that's trivial. Using sockets from shell, it's a little bit more complex, as opposite of using the FIFO file with cat and read from that file. And it's also a little bit more scalable to my knowledge. Lately, as practically we discussed more or less about 1 year ago at the developer meeting in Düsseldorf, Matthias was there. It's also here on I saw him earlier today on the conference room as well. Came with the idea of adding an embedded interactive shell. He planned to work on it. He tried a couple of prototypes, but at the end, I found a solution, and I just pushed it a few weeks ago. And since then, I quite contributed a little bit, as I found good documentation about the tool, or it's another framework from Python behind it, the prompt toolkit. So now with this interactive shell, you have like auto-completion. So the command name shows up as you type persistent history. So you get out, get in, and you can scroll up the previous comments. Completion suggestions from the history. So as you type, it's gonna show what it considers to be the best match. Even CLI line syntax highlighting, the beige one, so you can see integers or strings on different colors. And also the usual key bindings for navigation. So you can do Ctrl-R and do history search. You can use Ctrl-A, Ctrl-E for jumping at the beginning, at the end of command line. So I find it actually quite nice and surprisingly easy to develop. As again, I'm not really a Python developer by far. I consider myself even below newbie in Python, but I was able to contribute quite a lot. On the repository, there were a couple of contributors and contributions from Matthias, and then Victor helped with better formatting, like automatic formatting on commit and so on, which keeps the code quite clean. So this is just to give a presentation. Now I'm gonna share my screen and do live demo of what Kamailio or CamCLI can do. Hoping that after this one, more people will use it and a couple of more contributors jump on the wagon of bringing this tool to the next level. Likely to do a presentation in a new stable release of this tool soon to mark these new additions. Okay, so maybe this one is the tool I want to share or not. Is it? Can you see it? Yeah, so I hope you see my terminal. It's on a lab server I have. I just created an empty directory here just to clone from the repository to show like an installation. It's in Kamailio CLI. We'll go to this folder. I don't remember by heart these installation steps, but it's quite simple. So this is the README. I hope you see. Let me increase the font just for sake of being easier to watch it. Hopefully it's better now. Somehow. So the README, it's has good enough documentation as presentation of the tool. The good part with the framework is that the documentation for the commands, it's inside the code, so it's very easy. Once the code is updated, to update also the help, the associated help with the sub-comments. I'm going to show it also in the code. Going further on the requirements, practically I installed all these dependencies on Debian package. So I'm not going to do apt-get again. I'm just copy. Let me go to another terminal on this. This the right thing. Yeah. So if I paste now here, this was something contributed by Matthias. I already had this installation of the package, the requirements from the pip. So this is installing the requirements. What we have to do extra installation would be MySQL client, because theoretically it should work with Postgres or anything else that is supported by SQL Alchemy. So that's like an ODBC layer for Python. You can switch to SQLite or Postgres. And to install it globally, it's practically like just, this is for the development, the comments here, but to install it globally, you can just hit install current folder, checking again the dependencies, and now we are having it start. What's quite important, and I have it in the README, it's about the configuration file. By default, we don't deploy it automatically, but you can do it from the folder. So I already had it. Probably from a previous, the directory exists, we deploy the global one. There is an option. So for example, if you do now help, it shows you can do install in the user folder instead of the global one, and we'll place it in the user home folder config.kmcli. Now this config file, it's ini-like, and it has the usual domain, which you typically have to set also for KMCTL in KMCTL-RC. It supports command aliases, so maybe you have some command that you use pretty often and you want to shortcut it to something else. This is at the global level. Database connectivity, then the control tool, so we use this JSON RPC, the group of Kamailio, how to communicate for the JSON RPC, and actually I see here it's using either FIFO or it's using the socket as we specified. Socket type, it's gonna do socket. You can specify FIFO to use the FIFO attributes instead. And the output formal for these RPC commands, and we have it in the YAML compact format. For the interactive shell, there is another section where you can have aliases inside the interactive shell, and here you can shortcut full comments with parameters and so on. So just type that, and I'll show it during the demo. So this, now we have it installed. I think Kamailio, it's running here. Grep Kamailio. If I do KMCTL, so this is the old tool, uptime. I have this output. I just change into KMCLI, and I have the YAML format because it's what I put in the configuration file. If I do etc KMCLI, and I put here the JSON, sorry, it's taken from the local one. I have to go out of the sources because it's checking. Now it's also KMCLI in the taking the global setting in the etc KMCLI. So it's practically the same output as with old tool. Let me go to the compact format because I like it more. So I switch back to this YAML, and if I do KMCLI uptime, you see it again in the YAML format, a little bit more compact. And this is also like for the PS. We have a compact format because I change it to the output to be, again, more compact, as opposite with the KMCTL, which it does it pure JSON. You can also do it pure JSON with CamCLI. Even this one you can run like RPC, and then minus help. I can run it with RPC, and then have the, I think it's core PSX, the equivalent. So this is the YAML format as we want it. The PS command, it's having its own handling of the output, and it's more compact. Now, if I look to the sources of the PS command, this is practically catching the output of the command and then printing from the YAML or the JSON output in a single line. So practically, I can convert this as I want more. So you have a more compact with a dedicated subcommand, or you can use the generic RPC PS command to get the output. And you can run in the command line all these like for CamCTL, DB show version. This is old tool. You get it here. You have it with the new tool, CLI DB show version. It's different output because of the handler internally. But you can actually change here for DB show minus H actually. We have the output, so DB show version minus F, and I can get it as JSON. And I can get it as a dictionary. JSON. I'm not sure what's this because it's from the Python supported tabulate extension. So you can change this in a more flexible way. And if you want to start the interactive shell, CamCLI shell, it gets you into this prompt. If you start typing now, you have to type from the subcommand like db show. You have here option as you type, and suggestion from the history. Its version, you can eventually spot here the highlighting for the strings. And if I type it, you get it here. I can, again, search on the history, and I got it here. I can jump, Control-N, Control beginning. I think you have also delete, Control-K. And then it's suggesting like version from the history, left arrow, you got it from there. You can run PS, you can run all these commands that you have with CamCLI. You have the internal help. So as I said, you can shortcut aliases for the internal. So this is going to give, sorry, it's an internal command. Now if I type U, it's the uptime. Just by typing U or DV, it's showing the version table. So the internal commands, they start with colon in front, you know what's the exit and so on, the command map. You can even run shell commands from the shell. So like seeing what's in this folder, you can use the exclamation as a start of the command. So you can do like ls / to see what's on this system. So you have full. You can even connect to the database like DB CLI connect. And now I'm in MySQL client. From this exit and back in the CLI. It's using what you set up for username and password in the CLI in, so it's convenient not to type again the password to connect to the database if you want to do some operation directly to the database. What else? Like syntax highlighting DB1. If you press, you see different colors. This just to show different colors, numbers, and strings here. And exiting, you press here, and that's it. So practically, you have these two operational modes. One shot from the shell with output printed, easy to pipe to different other tools, and the interactive shell with quite some fancy features that can help operating it. What I actually want to show further, and maybe I'm gonna spend a little bit more time, it's extending it. So going back to the sources, remember, if you run it from the sources, it's gonna use the local CLI because it was convenient for testing. It's using the ini file from the CLI. From the source folder, so CLI, and then the comments, the subcommands are practically files started with cmd underscore and the command name into this folder. You just need to add here a new file for a new command, and then follow the click framework documentation, and should be easy to extend. So if we look, I don't know, like cmd hash table to make Fred happy because he likes this. So practically, we created a group of subcommands here, and then we implement the command of these subcommands, like list, like get. So it's using ctl command to run this RPC and handle the print output, setting the command like inserting in memory, direct in memory, a string value, or inserting in memory integer value, removing from memory, then flushing, like cleaning everything, reloading from the database, so trigger the reload, trigger a store to the database. Again, they are just wrappers around the comments, but for convenience, and you can see the help very easy, are written here. For more complex, like database add. So here we specify if you have a different database table name, so it doesn't have to be hash table. By default, it's hash table, but you can specify by this field. Then you can specify column names as parameters if you don't use the default ones, and then specify the value type, and it's expecting this the key name, key value, key type as parameter. So this corresponds to options or to arguments. As arguments, it's expecting only two, key name and key value, defaulting to the type in for val type, defaulting to these column names and database table names. It has, Python 3 has UTF-8 support natively, so we have to do some encoding, decoding to be sure we don't get the strange characters. And then we practically insert to the database based on what value type we have, either as an integer or as a string, the value in the database table. As I said, many of these commands were actually so KMCLI hash table, but then you have very good help. So if you just want to get, then you get here what you should give as parameters with the documentation text that you have in the code. Maybe I can actually add in like 3 minutes a new command as KMCLI commands. What would be something simple here? Maybe KMCLI commands CMD entry. So this is adding. Trying to figure out how complex it's beginning. Okay, let's do it this way. If I run MC, let's do it with MC shell SRV and RPC list. What would be interested to see as another command? This memstats, or what we don't have, we have here, we have flags, reset, echo. Okay, let's do an echo to see what this is doing and adding a new command. So practically we add in KMCLI commands cmd echo dot python. I'm doing a lot of copy and paste, so I'm gonna open another KMCLI commands cmd.ps as an inspiration. So I'm gonna copy this one. Hopefully copying is gonna work over. No. Let me use the mouse, because the terminal doesn't get the bindings. Okay, I hope it looks good. Now I just have to change. So it's a single command this time. It's echo RPC test. Echo RPC test. I think it was core echo, and I don't want to do any callback, so I don't reformat the output. I leave it as it's from the now if I do pip3, if I do KMCLI -h, I get the echo. And if I do KMCLI echo, I didn't do anything as a parameter, so it was just giving back an empty. Now, if I go to add a parameter, and see a lot. Let's go to used to code for Kamailio, comments, cmd echo. So I have the prototype, but obviously we want to add some parameters to see the echo. Let me take from this one as a parameter. So it's click argument. Name it txt. txt, and we have to make it here txt. And we have to pass it as a parameter now. Just to be sure I haven't done any. Maybe this is too complex. I don't see transport socket, RPC command. Let's give it a run and we'll see how it's going. So typically I do it in virtual environment with local updates being immediately visible. So if I do pip3, I did it, echo -h, and shows now already that I have a parameter. And if I do it like hello, I get it from the Kamailio back to. So practically we added a command, of course, not maybe that useful. I wanted to show it's not complex to do it from this perspective. A lot of copy and paste can help, especially for inserting to a database, like take from hash table or inserting in subscriber. You see how these options are provided, and you work from the other examples. It's how I actually do it a lot. Now, to try to end this, let me start the share screening and just go quickly to the GitHub. This coming in. So this is the README, and again you have to just show it a bit better than on the terminal. Besides seeing what's the list of subcommands, you have also some examples, and you have also a list of keys binding for the terminal. I think there are a few more. I listed the most important I tend to use. So that's it practically. Again, that was more to reveal what this tool can do, and hopefully now more people will find it useful and will get a few more contributors. Especially, I would like to have some help on testing with Postgres, being a very popular backend for Kamailio. I plan to do it as well, but I don't usually deploy the Postgres for my deployments. I use MySQL. I don't see any problems to have most of the commands just working. Only this, what I did, the DB connect, might need using a different command, because behind it's actually executing a shell command to go into the MySQL client. So yeah, this is it. I hope you enjoy it a little bit, and hopefully some of you will contribute. If you have questions on this presentation, Benjamin Dijan, I remark it was pretty awesome. That was about the presence. Don't drop table. Raw power, don't drop table. Always it's good to do some drop from time to time, otherwise we get bored. +1 for autocomplete. Yay. Anyone that spotted call questions? Not to scroll myself on the. If not, that was the presentation, and it's now the time for the party, more or less. Ali Shirvani, thanks for the live demo. Thanks as well for watching. Thank you for attending the sessions at the second day. I see Ole already partying on the live screen here. I think it's time to stop the live streaming, so we have the sessions for now, and then I'm gonna start it again for a few minutes to just make some celebration wishes or something in a more official way. And after that, we can stop it and have a wild party. Live streaming